My name is Avinash Ratta. I am the Managing Director and CEO of Grain Velocity, one of the few turnkey project management companies in our region that's focused on delivering profitable growth in the F&B restaurant, ingredients, and retail industries through e-commerce, market expansion, and development of new products and services. Personally, I have more than 20 years of experience in food and beverages across Nestle, Unilever, IFCO, including as Global Business Development Director and Chief Marketing Officer. So, quick question. How many of you were here yesterday? Oh, that is extremely good. Welcome back. Welcome back. And how was yesterday? Can I have a few comments from those who were here? Your hand. I saw your hand. How was yesterday? Can somebody give me a... Feel free to... Can you share me a few thoughts about yesterday? Anybody? Inspiring, fantastic. Thank you for that. All right. Yesterday, we heard of some crucial topics. We heard of the future of F&B manufacturing. We heard of Industry 4.0. We heard of Industrial Internet of Things. We heard of trends in food and beverages, and we had a pleasure to interact with a distinguished set of speakers and panelists on digitization in factories and on next-generation technologies in food and beverages. Today is going to be another exciting day, and we will look into the practicalities of artificial intelligence and blockchain. We'll open our mind to the future of food, future of taste and health, and we will dive into topics like sustainability and clean label. Ladies and gentlemen, at the Food Tech Summit 2018, the future is in focus. The future is now, and the future is here. I just want to point out a few administrative topics, because that's assigned to me. I will need to take that up. Please post on social media as much as you can. If you haven't already, use the hashtag FoodTechSummitDXB. Please go onto it and share your experiences, because that's part of our journey together. How many of you have accessed the Gulf Food app? Raise your hands. Okay. I am very happy for that, but I'd also be very happy if all of you go onto the Gulf Food app. There's a profile of the speakers throughout the event, as well as you can post your questions regarding any of the sessions, either while it's happening, hopefully not while you're listening to the speakers, but before that or after that. So please do that. Please also keep your mobile phones on silent, please. And the fire exits, you can see the signs all across the room in case of any event, and hopefully that will never happen today. So without further ado, let me invite on stage Mr. Mike Yesudas, the Chief Technology Officer and the IBM Watson Customer Engagement Services. He is also the IBM Distinguished Engineer, and he's here to speak to us about artificial intelligence and if it is worth your investment. Now, just to share a little bit about Mike, Mike is actually responsible for artificial intelligence in IBM, and what he does is implement that into solutions across the globe. So, without further ado, a big hand, and let's invite on stage Mike Yesudas.
So, before I start, I just thought maybe we will everybody has an idea about what IBM is. Maybe I'll probably show.
For me. come on. Wait for me, butterfly, wait for me. I'm only trying to set you free. Wait for me, problems, wait for me. I'm only human, so let me be. Let me be. Better keep on this sun go down. Don't chase that moon till the blood come out. Better keep on till the sun go down.
So I just thought maybe I'll give folks an introduction. We are not, and to be very fair, I asked my host whether if I could wear jeans. They refused. All right. So as Avinash said, I'm the guy who is responsible for embedding artificial intelligence into many of the solutions that people do worldwide. So I'll give you some. I'll do it much more practical way. I'm not going to give any hype or anything around it, whether if it's really worth the investment. So this is something which most people may not have noticed. This is how we used to do traditional software, which was you gather the requirements, you then go and do a solution, a design, and some development, some validation, testing, and doing this. But what has changed is the fact that the AI-driven tool development cycle is actually different. Okay, so those things that I have marked in purple are new, and those are not activities that we have. And the most important activity, of course, is the first one upstream. That's the data identification problem, right? So AI, as many of the speakers spoke yesterday, they said, it's all about getting the right data to make sure that you can make it work. But if you don't have the right data, then you have a problem. You just don't have it. So data identification is one of the simplest things that you have to do before you get any value out of it, right? Otherwise, if you don't know the data, and if you use the wrong data, you can prove anything. Most of the models that underpin AI are statistical models. And the old saying, statistically, you can prove anything if you have the right data. So basically, you might be going down the wrong track if you don't have the right data. Okay, so you have modeling and the development part of it, and then training, which is different to testing. Remember, we're talking machines, right, which don't understand how exactly is learning. So how does learning actually work? So let's say you're trying to teach a small kid how a newspaper looks like, right? Trying to teach him that something is a newspaper. I mean, you're not going to say, OK, newspaper has got this, these many columns, it looks like this, it can have pictures, etc. You show him a newspaper and say, son, this is a newspaper, OK? And you look at it and say, yeah. And then you show another newspaper, not the same one, and say, son, this is also a newspaper, right? And you show 4 or 5 of them, and then you say, OK, tomorrow morning when the newspaper comes, identify it, right? Now, remember, the newspaper for tomorrow, he would have never seen, right? Because it has not been published yet. So when he sees the newspaper tomorrow, somehow his brain has seen so much of data regarding the newspapers and said, that looks like a newspaper. Although he's not really confident, he's going to bring it. Dad, I think this is a newspaper. And I said, yes, son, that's right. So that's reinforcement of learning, right? Where the kid came back and said, I think it's a newspaper, and therefore this ought to be reinforced. And that's the learning process. So training is actually part of that. Whenever you have a machine, you have to teach it how to do it, right? So many years ago, in 1994, and some 25 years ago, I was working in Houston, and in the oil exploration business. That's where I actually started my career. My boss came to me and said, Mike, we have got all this data. Like, we collect tons and tons of data when we send these drills into the hole to check whether if there's oil or gas. Right? Is there anything you can do about them? I said, OK, let me try. And I looked at all the data and started to identify certain rules. And I identified some patterns. And it was a big deal. I worked on it for 3 months. And finally, I found a way to use that data to figure out whether if it is oil or gas or water. And it was like a breakthrough landmark patent, right? If you go online and check my name, you'll see that I have a patent in oil exploration, right? But it was actually data analysis that allowed me to do. So data and identification of patterns from data is something that has been there forever. It's not anything new. And we now have come to the next era, our 4.0 era of industrial revolution, and that's where we start to use that. Now, this paradigm shift is very important because without this, without understanding that it is different, don't try to drive it like you would do regular software. You call somebody and say, OK, here are this thing, go code and come back. No, without data, you probably can't do much, right? OK, let's see. OK. So remember, artificial intelligence is art first, intelligence later. OK, so literally, quite literally. So we are now on this mechanism to go and find out where good data is, where bad data is. And do you know what happens? When, let's say you want to start a new venture, you want to sell pizzas or something like that. The problem is, most of the artificial intelligence is all about getting the data, identifying a pattern, and then leveraging that to enhance your business, right? Problem is that data doesn't exist because you get into the chicken and egg problem, right? So where do you get data from? The original data that you need to get, you have to buy from somewhere, or an industry body has to provide that for you, right? Which is where, when I was listening yesterday to Mr. Luther speaking about the food platform, I said, that's a fantastic way in which an industry body could actually drive the collection of data and generalization of that data and then provide it for the members, right? It's actually an excellent way in which you can actually do that. So most of the time, you actually don't have real data that is that's actually available readily for you to do anything. And here's the other problem. Let's say, many years ago, there was a US retailer. I'm not allowed to say the name, but you can probably figure out from the story. So they had 2 flat quarters of sales, so they had a problem. So they fired their CEO, brought in a new CEO, and they said, well, he said, well, we're going to change the way in which we're going to do business. So these folks had 4 sale events, right? Spring, fall, summer, and winter. And he said, a sale like that doesn't make any sense, right? We're going to scrap all these sales, and we're going to do everyday low prices. Right? Now, they had a lot of loyal following who used to come for the sale events, and it would drive the sales up, and they would have spikes of their sales across 4 quarters. Guess what happened when they got rid of the thing? Suddenly, the sales started plunging. So now the company went into a little bit of damage control mode, and they said, well, here is a way in which we are actually going to provide free haircuts for kids, in the stores, so that the idea behind that would be moms will bring the kids, and the kids will have free haircut, moms will do the shopping, and our sale will go up. Guess what happened? Well, the moms came with the kids got the free haircut, moms left, right? So they didn't actually get the sale. It was quite easy for them to really realize that would happen if they done some video intelligence, right? They could have seen the number of people coming with their kids to actually do shopping, and they could have done a simple comparison, right? So it's a question of where data was not really used to make a strategic decision. And the important thing is, anytime you make a strategic decision, the data patterns have suddenly changed. You understood? So when you make a decision, your original data from which you derived intelligence and rules and everything else has changed. So one very important thing if you're doing artificial intelligence, or if you're doing, let's say, plain old machine learning, change has to be gradual. Abrupt changes you cannot handle with AI, okay? That's a simple practical tip. Whenever there is a huge change, stop, because your data set from where you derive that is actually different. Okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I have actually put, but the most important thing is, do you have data, right? And the other one is, all these activities that are related around data engineering, data science, how do small businesses and medium-sized businesses actually do this? The large ones obviously could afford an army of data scientists and who can come in and do it. And how do you actually do that, right? So I'll show you a little bit of this thing, how quickly you can actually start to embed AI within your solution or your application, right? Okay, so one of the industries in which we have very successfully done AI is actually in e-commerce, right? So we have the fashion industry, right? One of the problems in the fashion industry is that people will buy things, and they are very expensive, probably 2,000, 3,000 euros worth of stuff people would buy, and they'll put it on, and they'll say, I don't like it. They go back and return it, right? The moment you return a very high-value item, you have a problem. You've now created a depreciation in the price, and then you have to do restocking. Sometimes, you bought it in the UK, but it'll actually sell better in France. There's a lot of things that actually happen. But here is the way in which we use AI there. We looked at all the patterns of how people buy things and return things. The moment somebody shops, and I won't tell which customers it is, but the moment somebody shops, the system automatically computes the probability this is going to be a return. So they already know it, okay? So the moment you have bought something online and you think you're the only one who knows it, and it turns out that they already know that you are about to actually return it. So returns are one very key thing. And not only that, it'll actually predict the number of days in which you will actually return it. It'll say, in 5 days, this guy will actually return the thing, right? So it's easily possible. And I'll tell you a very simple thing. Looking at some of the data, what we analyzed, what we found was that when people place their orders after 10 p.m., there is a 15% probability, higher probability they'll return it. I don't know why. All items bought at night have a higher propensity of being returned. Just the data that's for that retailer. That's how it actually showed. Now, in the consumer electronics, the other issue is sometimes people would go in, check all the items in the showroom, then would say, you know what, I'm just leaving, I'm heading out. And that was their main problem, that people would not go into the showrooms and therefore would not buy things from their stores, but would try to take things online and then just drop off, cart abandonment, right? So one of the things we said was, okay, looking at all the carts that got abandoned, we looked at the items and the people who abandoned it. And now when you start adding items to a cart, the system goes back and computes what is the probability that this will actually be checked out, right? So when the probability goes above a certain level, and it says, okay, we are going to give, not going to make any nice offers for it. If the probability goes less, it starts popping up saying, hey, how about some free shipping for you, right? It's a deal. Do you want to check out now in the next 5 minutes? Why do you do that? All right. So these are all different things. So the one main question is in the food services industry, and which is where a lot of the way in which that I actually work now, trying to do some of the disruptive this thing. And I'll tell you one very important disruption that I've seen in the food service industry. And if you go to Silicon Valley, you'll actually see the amount of money that is being pumped into food services applications, right? It's enormous. And the reason, and because of that, you now have the kitchen, which is where food is prepared, processed, whatever, right? And where food is experienced. And food is the only thing that touches all 5 senses, right? So where it is actually experienced, the dining room, they've actually got separated, right? Now it is possible for you to take a kitchen and then scale it like 50 times the size of Amazon and then deliver food to wherever you want at much lower prices, right? So that becomes the very large kitchens now will start to look more like actual manufacturing units as opposed to just little mom and pop shops, right? So that's the disruption, which just like Uber that we saw in the past, the changes that all the Silicon Valley folks will actually tell you this, that's the disruption they're waiting for, the separation of the kitchen and the dining room, right? So the dining room can be some place where you just want to have a dining hall and order food from wherever, and you and your friends go sit down there, book a table, and you'll get food from 4 or 5 different places. Everybody gets their choice, right? Otherwise, if you went to a Mexican restaurant or a Chinese restaurant, you will have a problem, right? So that's the next disruption that we believe that is actually coming. In fact, I'll show you something related to that. There are a lot of other things that maybe not so much of other things. So how do you take AI and how do you downsize it so that small businesses, the food service industry actually benefits from that? That's the thing. So here, what I have said that was just from a thought. Food delivery happens. It's already there. It's around the world, right? Everywhere you go, you'll actually find that. But what you don't have is, so the delivery fees are usually on a per delivery basis, right? But that's not the most efficient way of actually doing it. If you have heard about Costco in the US or Amazon Prime, right? What you've actually got with that is you've got a certain basic entrance fee, member fee, right? $110 or something like that. And because you spend this upfront $110, people keep buying more and more, and it becomes more like feeding frenzy. You keep buying thousands of dollars worth of stuff because you spend this membership fee, and they want to maximize it, right? So we don't have that model yet, but we will. I'm very, very sure of it, and that's what we're waiting for, right? So that's where I said annual fee for delivery, like maybe, I don't know, $200 per year for all food delivery, whatever food you want, right? And then suddenly said, because I paid for the delivery, now I'm going to order it every night, right? That's how it works. So large kitchens, this thing, and different dining experiences, things like that, right? But there are challenges. There are lots of challenges. The problem with trying to use AI into a small business is that, well, whereas the business may be small, the data needs are not small. Okay? So although it is small business you're talking about, it doesn't mean that you can do with less data. And definitely you cannot do with fake data. There is no way in which you will get any realistic results if you use fake data. You have to use realistic data, and you have to actually get sufficient quantity of data. How do you know that? How do you know that you have enough data and you have all the data that is necessary? That's where, remember, I think it was Mr. Luther who actually said that. Engage a data scientist. Every small business should, even if it is a small amount of time, you should still do that. Okay? So very valuable, very, very practical advice. Okay, so one of those things is the customization of solutions. So let me actually talk a little bit about maybe 2 sentences about how we see software and how we see data, right? Software is a representation of the technology that you use, right? And data is a representation of the business. So within, and as my mentor once told me, he said, a much older gentleman, when I started out, he said, remember, there are only 2 things in every business. You have assets and you have data, okay? So remember, all you have is those 2. And how you leverage those assets, how you utilize them, it's up to you to do it, and data drives that, okay? And so if you want to really use it, every business is unique in its eventual delivery, and every business is also got general rules, right? So there are things that you can derive out of, like, what are the regulations that control it? And that's you can just derive it from the data. and what are the most important KPIs that you need to worry about if you are delivering pizza. I mean, is that the temperature? Is that the softness? Is that the look and feel of it? You can actually get a picture of your pizza. There are applications that shows you, here is your pizza being delivered. It should look like this. So they'll give you a sample picture so that if it doesn't look like this, reject that pizza on the spot, right? All right. Now, let me just talk about some examples of this thing in the manufacturing. I have not gone too much into it, but here it is. One of the places where we find AI is very valuable is actually in deciding the quality control. How frequently should you sample, right? Now, typically you will realize that you should sample, they'll tell you every 100,000 sample should be taken, checked, destroyed, whatever, right? Or send it to the lab. But that 100,000 is just a random number. But it could be that in the morning, 100,000 makes sense, but in the afternoon, when the shift is actually running better, you actually don't need to really do that. And you can predict where your failures are. And I think it was Amir Hussain who actually presented yesterday. I was actually watching it, and he was saying that, yes, there is actually predictive failure that you could actually go about. Let me just try and wrap it up quickly. So here's a prototype. So we have a tool that says Embedded Business AI Framework, right? It actually is just an open framework. Use it to enhance your AI into this thing. So I used it just for a simple app that would take things like you can type in, you can use natural language, you can do search, et cetera, et cetera. What it provides is not so much this part that is the interesting piece, right? Because this, you can have it on an app, you can have it you can have it work it from home, or you can do anything else. And that is probably the interesting part, because it can do things like you can predict the demand for tomorrow. So you have a dish that you don't know what the demand is, but you can predict it, right? So that way, once you predict the demand for tomorrow, you know how much stock is actually going to get consumed. It also can give you capabilities like you can just let Watson read the recipe, pull out the ingredients, and then it knows the quantity, and it will connect it to the stock. So there is a little bit of integration involved, but you can actually do that, right? So, and you can say today's guest count actual, tomorrow's guest estimate. This is something three of my colleagues, Sheffield, Nikita, and Nitin, cooked up in a few days. So just to show you how easy it is to really use this EBA. So, and let me see whether let me see whether if I can run this video quickly.
This demo showcases Watson Embedded Business AI Framework for food and beverages industry. Watson Restaurant Assistant is an intuitive user interface to help customers ease the process of ordering food and beverages according to their preferences and tastes. Watson's natural language-based search narrows down the menu for the user to make a quick choice. Watson keeps track of a customer's order history and helps the customer navigate at a much faster pace when placing additional orders. Watson Restaurant Assistant takes the customer to the checkout screen with just a few clicks. Watson Restaurant Assistant will also assist the inventory manager to predict the demand for an item in the future. Automatic data collection occurs by uploading recipes or invoices, and this serves as data for unsupervised machine learning. Continuous machine learning takes place when actual data is validated against the demand prediction. The most frequently asked questions are in the form of buttons. This would ease the process for the inventory manager to get the daily estimate.
Okay, so that's just to give you an example of a simple app you can just cook up and use the back end to say what's the demand like, right? So just to make it easier. And even as I'm not saying it's ready for a small mom and pop shop, but medium-sized businesses should be able to actually leverage that. And that's it. Did I do well on time? Or?
Thank you very much, Mr. Yesudas. That was fantastic. Actually, last time I was at my favorite. Sorry. Yes, it's coming. I was just wanting to add that last time I was at my favorite Vietnamese restaurant, I saw the restaurant owner with 4 different iPads with 4 different incoming streams from Zomato, Uber Eats, you name it, Deliveroo. And each of them, to me, seem like data streams. And that's what he was talking about. And just imagine the power that an engine like IBM Watson could add to that if we have artificial intelligence managing those data streams and then providing insights so that you can act upon them either as a restaurant owner or as a customer. So with that, I wanted to open the floor to some questions. Does anybody have a question to Mike? Mike's, we are fortunate to have him here today. Please ask. Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, Mike. This is Gülsüm. Actually, I'm from Dubai World Trade Center. I'm the organizer. So as we're dealing millions of data here as well, so it's a very interesting topic for us, just this predictive analysis about data. So whatever you have presented, I think it's brilliant what's going on in changes in terms of AI and blockchain is just bringing a complete new era for all of us, for all industries. But most often it can be applicable if you have a solution by IBM, so you can bring it to many industries, many from an SME or a big, large corporation. It can be implemented very quickly. But I'm wondering, so how we are ready in terms of just these technologies are changing so fast, but readiness in terms of human resources, are we ready just whenever we sit with IBM or any other a solution provider, the solution sounds brilliant, but when I ask the question, okay, how we are ready to implement that solution in our organization, okay, and the answer would be, as you have suggested, okay, to bring and hire a data scientist. But is it that really easy to find out, go out a data scientist right away? Are we ready just also bringing that up speed that people are available out here? Or how we will gonna make faster also that we are becoming ready in terms of human resources implementing these brilliant solutions? So that's my question.
That was a very, very long question, but I'll try and paraphrase what she said. So basically, whenever you go in for any data-driven solution, it's very, very big and very huge, and that you need an army of people and the resources requirements for that, right? So let me first tell you what it is like, right? Let's say you are shown a very beautiful steel structure, maybe Eiffel Tower, right? So you've all seen that. And we want to create the Eiffel Tower, so that's the final finished version of the artificial intelligent machine, right? But what we are looking for is iron ore, okay? We now have to make steel, get the iron ore, and we have to get the steel and then use the steel, then weld it all together and put it together. So what people don't see is they will say, oh, you've got data, you've got tons of data. And here's the thing. But very often what happens is like iron ore, right? And I think Avinash was the one who said that 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years. But I have news for you. Most of that data would probably be useless. You wouldn't actually use it, right? But not so much this thing. But knowing what is useful and what is not so useful is actually your challenge. And that's where you really need the expertise. It's not so much you need an army of people like an ERP implementation to really go and do that. That is not my intention, right? So I go everywhere from Alaska to Auckland to go for the other way around, okay? So all the way. So to go and implement solutions, but my team actually does that. But most of the time, my intent is to keep those budgets smaller, because there's no point in running a huge project which is bigger than the business itself. It's not worth it. And make sure that it is downsized properly. And that starts with proper data identification. Most of the time, you waste time trying to figure out where this useful data is. And that's where, if you connect yourself well with industry bodies, you can get access to data, and then you can say, oh, this is how your data should look like. Because the data scientist who's going to show up will have no idea about your business. And by the time he or she learns about the business and tries to deliver something, it'll be several weeks. And that's the problem. So you need, if you have industry bodies which will provide you with some template of how the data should look like for your business, it becomes much better and quicker.
Thank you, Mike, again. And we don't have time for more questions. But however, our expert is available, so please continue to be in touch with him.